Hello, everyone, and welcome to our professional development today about reading accessibility, tools to support all learners. My name is Lindsey Cox, and I am the Supervisor of Exceptional Learners for the district. Also joining me today is Tara White, the Director of Literacy, and Rickie Meyers, our Dyslexia Coordinator. Today we hope to share with you a couple tools and resources that we have available as a district just for you to better support students in your classroom.
So what is accessibility? Well, accessibility is one form of accommodations for students. An accommodation should not change your learning expectation for students. It enables them to participate more fully in their classroom environment. It should help them foster independence and needs to be embedded as part of their daily instruction. While you may use accommodations with students who have an ILP, an IEP, or a 504, you do not necessarily need one of those plans to use the accessibility tools we'll be talking about today.
So for a second, let's focus on what accessibility is not. So as we look to provide reading accessibility to all students, there are a few things that people often kind of reflect on and think maybe this might be part of accessibility, but we want to make it clear that reading accessibility is not the following. First of all, offering enlarged photocopies. I know that a lot of times people feel like if a student has a print disability, this is a good way to accommodate that and provide accessibility, but we have much better alternatives to offer them that fall more in line with the accessibility requirements. Cutting assignments in half without having a rationale for such cuts is another example. Removing a student from Tier 1 instruction to provide other instruction instead, including lowering expectations or rigor for students. Definitely something we want to stay away from. We want to make sure as we try to help students close gaps and get the accessibility that they need, that we're not actually pulling them from Tier 1 instruction, which is only going to continue to widen that gap. So how do we make that something that they are getting both at the same time and not one or the other? And then providing translated text for all students in their native language. Again, oftentimes this is something with English learners that we feel might be something helpful for them, but as we're trying to help them get the vocabulary they need and the instruction they need in reading comprehension, this is not necessarily making the text accessible to them. So something you want to try to avoid.
All right, so who needs or can benefit from accessible materials? I love this infographic here because it really breaks down the demographics of a classroom. And so in this example, we see just 9 students listed in the overall population. But if we look at how they benefit from using accessibility features or accessible materials, evidence shows that 7 out of 9 students, or approximately 78%, of students would benefit from having accessible materials.
Breaking that down a little bit further, we have students who have characteristics of dyslexia. Research shows us that up to 20% of the general population has some degree of dyslexia. And so for Elkhart, that would mean that we would have 1,252 elementary students, 388 middle school students, and 676 high school students who would have some degree of dyslexia and would benefit from this sort of accessibility tools.
For our students here who are English language learners, they make up 18% of the population of students at Elkhart. Fall into this category. That means we have 1,127 elementary students, 350 middle school students, and 608 high school students who are all considered English language learners at some point on that scale.
Then we also have our students who are identified with disabilities. So that's nearly 17% of our student population. Equivalent to 1,064 elementary students, 330 middle school students, and 575 high school students. Now, well, the reason that we bring up all of these numbers is because this gives you a breakdown of our student populations here in Elkhart Community Schools. So in any given classroom, this is what your classroom might look like. Now, yeah, the characteristics or the students who are identified with dyslexia, EL, special ed, or not identified, they're not necessarily hard lines, but this gives us a great visual just to see what our classrooms really look like and how our students can be impacted and benefited by these accessible materials. Now, another thing to remember is that even though we have these populations of students that are identified, whether it be with dyslexia as an English language learner or for special education, there's also students who are not identified that can still benefit from this. So somebody always told me, when we're looking at special ed, we come across cases all the time about students who barely qualify. Well, for every one of those students that barely qualified, there are several more who barely didn't qualify. And so as we're looking at our supports as a district and making sure that our students are reaching their fullest potential, making sure that we're building in these accessibility features right from the beginning when we're planning our instruction to make sure that we're supporting all students to reach their highest potential.
So what are some general tools for accessibility that are available within our district? Well, for one, we have iPads as one-to-one technology for our students. Every single student in Elkhart has these features. The iPads have built right into them both text-to-speech technology, that's having the iPad read what is on the iPad to students, and speech-to-text technology, and that's dictation, so the student can talk to their iPad and it'll write what they're thinking. Other features that we have that are text-to-speech, now Canvas has a screen reader that's attached to it, and we have Snap and Read, which is available to every single student in our self-service app station. And for speech-to-text, we have the dictation feature and the iPad features. And we also have Co-Writer, which is also available to all students in our self-service app.
All right, so what we want to do is just share with you a little sneak peek about what Snap and Read is. And of course, it'll take a second for this video to load, but it gives a great overview of Snap and Read, and then we'll talk further.
You have many students, and each learns a bit differently. Each has reading needs as unique as their fingerprint. Many are reading below grade level. Some struggle with recall, and others organization, while others are learning the local language. The challenge is that so much of curriculum is tied to reading that success in school largely depends on the ability to understand text. This is what makes Snap and Read Universal so vital for students. It gives them flexible tools that address diverse reading needs right in the Google Chrome toolbar, so students can really understand their text wherever they read. On websites, Google Drive, PDFs, Bookshare, and even Amazon's Kindle Cloud Reader. Students hear text read aloud with a click.
Once inside, I'm conducted to a room and left alone. It's the richest place I've ever been in, with thick, deep carpets and a velvet couch and chairs.
It even works with inaccessible text like Flash and text embedded in images. When a student comes across text that's still too difficult, they dynamically level it for better understanding. If language is an issue, they translate it. Study tools help students build an outline and organize it, then transition to writing. And a bibliographer helps them cite sources for research reports. As an educator, you get data that shows how much students are reading and the reading levels of their text. It's all part of Snap and Read Universal, a next-generation reading tool that supports diverse reading needs, helping students read with understanding independently, creating a truly personalized learning environment.
All right, so when we look at that accessibility feature of a text reader, part of the question that comes to mind for me is how much does a text reader really help students? This is a awesome explanation of just how that audio support can support a student and just to help them with independence. So this little graph shows that the student is actually a 5th grade student with an independent reading level of 4th grade. But when we give that student a human audio support to go along with their text, they're actually able to read and comprehend on grade level, even a slightly above grade level. But here's something even more interesting. So give them their text reader or that, that technology voice and independent feature, as opposed to having a teacher or a paraprofessional sit with that student and read to them. This student was actually able to comprehend material at a 7th grade level with 75% accuracy. So obviously this varies from student to student, how much that text support can help them. But overall, in general, it helps students build their independence and their confidence when it comes to reading. Long-term impact of using a text reader could actually show additional benefits and works more like a reading intervention. So this student was a 3rd grade student with an independent reading level at 1st grade. They began using these text accessibility features in November. Here we see their results with a human reader and then with a text reader. By April, this same student was not only able to read at grade level, but given their text reader and their human reader voices and that support, they were able to comprehend far above their grade level at the 6th and 7th grade. So if you're not sure how much this tool or these accessibility features will benefit your students, there is another resource that you can work with and get a report for each one of your students or even specific students that you work with. So your MTSS coordinators and your MTSS administrators all have access to this tool called UPAR. So UPAR is about a 30-minute assessment that gives you this report for each student that you decide to test. It's really quick and easy to administer, and then as you can see, your results are very easy to identify and understand. And this will give you not only an impact of what each individual student and the impact that the accessibility features can have for one student, but you can actually do this with an entire class and see more of that breakdown like we showed at the very beginning of who's actually benefiting from having these accessible materials.
So I want to talk for a minute about some general text for accessibility. So one of the things that we started this year for all students across the district K through 12 is Sora. And Sora is basically a version of Overdrive. So if you've ever used Overdrive or the Libby app for the public library, you can use that. We have the student version called Sora, which allows us to offer a platform of digital books and audiobooks for students to read on their iPads or on any other devices that they might have. So if your students haven't downloaded the Sora app, you can go to the self-service portal and do that, or you as a staff member can do that as well. Some of the benefits of Sora is it integrates with the e-cards that all students get from the Elkhart Public Library. So in addition to having text that we purchase through the district, it also allows them to have access through Sora for any text in their categories from the Elkhart Public Library. So one of the things that's nice about Sora, if you have currently text, let's say you have a class set of novels that you're reading in class, and you have a student with who has a need for an accessibility tool like a screen reader. Then if the student has that ebook on their iPad, they can use those accessibility features on their iPad for them to read that text. So we can get those texts for them that you might be using, like I said, class novel sets, any kind of trade books that they might be using. We can get those on Sora, and then the students will have them on their iPads and then be able to use any of those accessibility features that are available. There's a link below there also that shows the specific accessibility features available on Sora and Overdrive, but it is also compatible with the iOS screen reader. The second accessibility tool is called Mac and Via, and Mac and Via is actually available for students who qualify for a print disability, and you can request use of that through a digital rights manager, but it basically works the same as Sora. It just might provide a few more accessibility tools. For example, if a student needs an audio version, we can get that for them through Mac and Via if they qualify for that disability. I'll let Rickie handle the next one.
So the next part is electronic text features, and that's just basically allowing students to change their fonts, their colors, the contrast of the print, size of their print, and the page layouts. This needs to make sure that we're not confusing that these will specifically manage students with dyslexia. This would help with eye strain and personal student preference. However, there's an article that's linked here that you will have access to after this presentation that asks, do special fonts help students with dyslexia? And the answer from research tells us that no, it is not necessarily an intervention for students who have dyslexia, but it shouldn't be necessarily discouraged from using because it's a personal preference. Just like us as adults, we have personal preference when we're using our e-readers at home. We may change our contrast, may help with our eye strain, but it does not necessarily give us an intervention for dyslexia. So, what would be the benefits of using accessible material and making that available to all of our students? As we showed you at the beginning of this presentation, almost a good majority of your students are going to benefit from having this available to them. But there are some harmful effects of making it something that students have to do in isolation. And some of those harmful effects would be decreased access to full instructional opportunities. If a student feels like it's cheating or they're weird or they're isolated and doing these things, they may not do them, and they may not then access maybe the novel that you're using with your classroom or being able to do the research that's needed for an assignment. Diminished access to the full range of the curriculum. So we said in the beginning of this presentation that this helps students fully access their curriculum, but if it's done in isolation, students may not choose to access their accessibility features. Having a lack of opportunity for social interactions. So students who are off in the corner who have to do this by themselves will not be fully integrated into their classroom, and then there will be some social ramifications for students. It will lower their self-esteem if they're feeling they have to do it in isolation. They'll develop a stigma towards doing it, and maybe every other student will be wondering, well, how come they are using it and I can't use that, and they may not feel positive towards that, their peer. And also it creates an isolation from their peers in the educational setting. So as educators, we really want to normalize this accessibility feature and make it available for all of our students.
So additional resources available. We've added some links here you're going to be able to access after the presentation. If you're not familiar with the ECS Literacy Resource Center, you want to check that out. We're giving you the link here. There's also a link under staff resources on our district website, but this is a great location for you to go for all things literacy. We have standards and shared units and assessments and any of the SMECNS trainings or other professional development pieces, including things that we've talked about today, you will be able to access here on the Literacy Resource Center. So I would suggest going there and checking that out, bookmarking it, and using that when you need resources for that.
All right, everyone, we appreciate your time today, and we hope that you found this information useful. As both Rickie and Tara said, the additional resources as well as the PDF version of our slide deck today will be down below in your resources. And feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any further questions or comments that you would like to address regarding accessibility. Have a wonderful day.